couple of days ago, I did a video about Spencer Rattler and gave him a report card for the season. You guys seem to thoroughly enjoy that series, so I decided we're going to do it again today, and this time we're to talk about Anthony Richardson from Florida. He's one of the most polarizing players in the country, as some think he's unbelievably overrated, while others think he could be a top 3 quarterback prospect for the 2023 NFL Draft. In today's video, I'm going to introduce you to who Anthony Richardson is, how he got to Florida, why he has so much hype, and then we're going to give him a report card for the year. But before we get started, be sure to hit that subscribe button as we're on the road to 100K. Leave a like if you want to support the channel. Give me another player I can make a report card on my next video, and turn on notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's talk about Anthony Richardson. In order to grade Richardson, we first need to go back in time and see how he got to this point. He was originally from the city of Miami, Florida, but at 10 years old, he would move to Gainesville. By his freshman year of high school, Richardson was already 6 foot tall and was dominating older competition on the basketball court and on the football field. He was ahead of schedule, and current Gator wide receiver Trent Whittemore had this to say, quote, "I think the first time we actually met was my sophomore year of high school, his freshman year playing East Side. He was at receiver, I believe. I was kind of like, who is this kid? He looked like he should probably be in college, and he was a freshman in high school making crazy plays. For obvious reasons, he continued to practice and develop and started to gain serious recruiting attention. As a junior, Richardson would pass for 1,567 yards with 17 touchdowns and 6 picks. He also rushed for nearly 1,000 yards on the ground and had 16 scores. He led his team to a 7-4 record, and that is why he was a huge name. He said, quote, "My freshman year, I didn't really know about signing. Some people go to college and some people don't. Being here and looking back to where I was, it feels good. I finally made it to my dreams." That's why he decided to stay home and play for the Gators. He committed after their Friday Night Lights recruiting event, but some people thought that wouldn't happen. Many believed that Florida was going to go after recent Bama decommit Carson Beck, and Richardson decided he was going to explore other options too. It would not last long though, as Beck would go to Georgia and Jeff Sims would go to Georgia Tech. This meant that Richardson would re-sign with the Gators and was very excited for the opportunity. Being from Gainesville, he was excited to be the local legend. He said, quote, "It's a blessing, not only because my family is super close and watched from just around the corner, but it's a blessing because I'm being a role model to the young people in this generation in Gainesville and letting them know that anything is possible and they can go anywhere they want to go. It's all a blessing, you know. I'm truly blessed." Both Florida fans and Anthony were happy that he would be arriving in Gainesville, and 24/7 Sports was really high on him. They ranked him as a 4-star recruit, the number 9 dual threat quarterback, and the 204th best player in the class of 2020. So, as someone who would need a little bit more polishing in his game, how would he end up doing at Florida, and would he pan out? Richardson would arrive as the 3rd-string quarterback behind Kyle Trask and Emory Jones. The Gators would have a terrific 2020 season, and Richardson would have a chance to play in 3 games. He'd run the ball 3 times against Missouri, had 2 plays against Arkansas, and then had 1 play which went for a touchdown against Oklahoma. He finished the year at 27 yards and 1 touchdown. Going into 2021, many fans were excited for a quarterback battle between Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. It ended up going down to the wire, but eventually Mullen would name Emory as the starting guy. At first, many were excited to see what Emory could do, but after he struggled, some thought it was time to turn to Richardson. Against USF, he would complete 3 of 3 passes for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then had 4 carries for 115 yards and another touchdown there. That's a ridiculous stat line, and every time Anthony Richardson touched the ball, it seemed he had a chance to take it the distance and would make this Florida offense so much more dynamic. But a common trend from Dan Mullen is he likes to stick with one quarterback. Richardson would only have 6 plays against Kentucky before he would throw an interception in a 42-0 loss to Vanderbilt. He'd get an opportunity to play in their road loss against LSU, and in that game, he passed for 167 yards with 3 touchdowns and had another score on the ground, but would have 2 costly turnovers, and they would lose 49-42. Richardson would also get a chance to play against Georgia, and he had 2 costly interceptions in that game and failed to score a touchdown. The final time he would play the remainder of the year was against Florida State, as in a 3-point victory, he'd throw for 1 touchdown. Richardson was a mixed bag as a redshirt freshman. Yeah, he of course had some highlight plays, but he also struggled with turnovers, and whenever he got time, he was not consistent enough to earn that starting job away from Emory. I'm not saying Jones was any good either. On the year, we finished with 529 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, and 5 picks. He'd also have 400 yards on the ground and 3 scores there. During the spring, it was announced that Emory Jones was going to transfer to Arizona State, so now the job was Anthony Richardson's. Yeah, technically there was a battle between him and Jack Miller, but that was settled pretty quickly, and new head coach Billy Napier wanted to see what Richardson could do and if he could be his guy. At the beginning of the year, there were a ton of mock drafts hyping him up, and some even had him as a first-round pick. This was clearly all based on potential, not actual stats so far, but how would he do when he actually took the field? Well, his first game, he'd be very impressive. Against number 7 Utah, he threw for 168 yards and then had over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. He ended up having the game-winning score. The Florida offense looked great, and he had that it factor that every Florida fan has been waiting for. He'd lead them to an upset over number 7 Utah, and his Heisman hype started to soar. The following weekend, he'd be matched up with another big-time SEC quarterback in Will Levis. This was supposed to be one of the premier quarterback battles of the SEC this year, and neither quarterback was too impressive, and Richardson was not great at all. He went 14 of 35 for 143 yards and 2 interceptions. He obviously didn't play very well, and they'd lose by 10 points to Kentucky. One weekend later, Richardson would once again struggle. He went 10 of 18 for 112 yards and 2 picks against USF, and if it weren't for a botched snap, USF could have brought that game to overtime and may have upset them in the swamp. Luckily they'd win though, but 2 bad performances in a row were not looking good for Richardson. Things would not get any easier in week 4, as he'd now have to travel on the road to number 11 Tennessee. This was going to be his biggest challenge yet, and he was up for it. He threw for a career-high 453 yards with 2 touchdowns and also had 1 interception. It didn't stop there though, as he also had 62 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, and he literally put Florida on his back, put on a show on the road, and almost led them to a win. They would recover a late onside kick, and he'd have an opportunity to complete a Hail Mary, but as he was hit, it went short and it was intercepted. They'd lose 38-33, but the Anthony Richardson hype was back. This past Sunday, he'd play against Eastern Washington and would go 8 of 10 for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns before he'd leave the game with an injury. It seems it was all pretty precautionary, as he's going to play this weekend against Mizzou. I mean, there's no reason to trot the guy out there against Eastern Washington. They won easily, 52-17. So, now that we know how Anthony Richardson has done, let's go to his report card. Currently, he's thrown for 1,116 yards, 4 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, completed 55% of his passes, and has a 128.2 passer rating. He also has 241 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns there. That's a lot of stats thrown at you, but let's see where he ranks. He's number 7 in the SEC in passing, number 12 in passing touchdowns, has the 2nd most interceptions, the 13th best completion percentage, the 13th best passer rating. He's number 20 in the SEC in rushing yards, and number 3 in the SEC in rushing touchdowns. It's definitely a mixed bag with him. Unfortunately, it seems he is near the bottom in a lot of these areas, but unlike a lot of other quarterbacks, he really hasn't had any tune-up games to pad those stats. For my grade on him though, I'm going to have to give him a C. Out of 6 categories, he's only in the top half in one of them, and he is near the bottom in some very important areas. He's turning the ball over, hasn't been very efficient, and has not been able to score through the air as a quarterback, it seems. So yeah, we're going to give him a C for that. In terms of wins, I give him a B. His best win is by far number 7 Utah, who is still a top 15 team. He also beat USF and also beat Eastern Washington. Yeah, only the Utah win pops off the page there, but his losses to Kentucky and Tennessee aren't that bad. Both of them are still competing for an SEC title, and he played very well against Tennessee. So for wins, I'm going to give him a B. In terms of his draft stock, we're going to give him an A-. He is still seen in the majority of first-round mock drafts, and I even saw an article yesterday talking about how he could reunite with Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. The only reason they give him an A- instead of an A+ is because there's obviously room for him to be even better and climb up into that top 5, but currently he's sort of seen as that number 3 prospect. He gets an A- there. Then finally we get to his it factor, which I'm going to give him a B. He made some awesome plays in that Utah and Tennessee game, and at times has shown complete brilliance. At times he's also been terrible, shown a lack of judgment, and has questionable decision making. Overall though, Anthony Richardson is a really fun player to watch, and I'm going to give him a B- in the it factor department. What does his overall grade come out to? I'm going to give him a B. His stats bring him down a little bit, but with his high draft stock and his solid wins and solid it factor, that'll get him to that B average, and I think for the most part, Richardson has delivered on the hype. Yes, he could be better in some areas, but a lot of players who've been hyped up this year have disappointed, so give credit to Richardson for not letting the hype get to his head and for still performing. If he continues to have a good season, he's definitely going to be off to the NFL, and let's enjoy the rest of the Anthony Richardson show. But what do you think? If you're a Florida fan, what do you grade Richardson? What do you think of him? And if you're a fan of another school, what player should I take a look at next? It could literally be anyone. I really hope to make this series a staple on the channel, so be sure to leave a like if you want to support it, leave a comment and a suggestion, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.